Well, we will get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for the Rapid Change Management webinar series, episode 11. I am Brennan German. I'm president of Bright Talent. I'll be your host and facilitator. We also have Renee Maurer, who's our head of operations, and she'll be helping me moderate this webinar today. Renee is going to turn off her camera in a minute, but she'll come back as a voice because the way the functionality of this webinar works is you're not open to ask questions, rather than you have to enter your questions into the Q&A functionality. So as Matt and I are talking, please enter your questions, and then after Matt and I are done, Renee will jump in and ask those questions on your behalf. And I'm going to properly introduce Matt in a second, as I want to give context to this series. And to give context, I want to share my screen and our website so you know where to find the Rapid Change Management series. So let me share, and hopefully Matt will tell me if it's not working, but it looks like it is working. Awesome. All right, so this is our website at brighttalent.com. As I mentioned, this is part of the Rapid Change Management series. The best way to access this series on our website is to click on this green banner. And we created this series. One of our core values is to serve our community. And one of the ways that we serve our community is providing understanding HR is changing all the time. We saw an opportunity to provide HR leaders tools to help them in change. And so if you were to click on this banner, this Rapid Change Management series, we've created really three different things. One is the playbook for rapid change management. So this is a free download full of materials, tools, templates to help you with your change initiatives. And then leaping over the webinar series, we have, if you're not interested in going it alone, we have some services that we help you with your change management initiatives. And then we also created this webinar series because we felt there were so many relevant topics and so many different experts to talk about as it relates to change. We created this series. And if you were to click on this and go to the Rapid Change Management webinar series homepage, you would land here. Most of you perhaps already came here and registered for today's webinar. And then after today's webinar, we're recording this and we're going to upload it on demand. And so you scroll a little further and you will see where all the other series are housed, and you can come back and watch this anytime you'd like. So this is how you get back here after today. So that's how you would get to our webinar. In terms of the format for this webinar, we kind of call this a podcast style webinar. It's only 30 minutes in length. Matt and I are going to have a conversation. There's no presentation. Matt and I will talk about 25 minutes, and then we'll have enough time to get through all of your questions for the last 5 to 10 minutes. And although we say it's 30 minutes in length, we'll go as long as we need because we know this is an important topic. And again, mentioning that for those of you that just jumped in, as we're talking, please enter your questions format so that Renee at the end could ask those for you. And then I failed to mention, when we upload that webinar at the end, I found a couple of great Forbes articles relating to career development that are very relevant to our topic today. So we'll also have those for download too, for those of you that are interested. So let me jump in and properly introduce our guest today. So Matt Hill leads the Global Talent Acquisition Organization at Dexcom, a medical technology pioneer in the treatment of diabetes. Prior to Dexcom, he led sourcing, talent marketing, and regional recruiting teams as a director of talent acquisition at Qualcomm in Sydney, Australia. Before Qualcomm, he held a variety of TA leadership roles in medical device and semiconductor companies, including a year in Shanghai. Matt received a master's degree from UC San Diego and a bachelor's degree from the University of Colorado at Boulder, now known as Showtime, as it relates to college football. So it is a privilege to introduce you all to Matt. Matt, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for being here. And Brennan, thanks for inviting me. I was thinking back that I just met Brennan 9 years ago this month because I met him my first week at Dexcom. And so going into my 10th year at Dexcom and my 10th year of knowing Brennan, I'm feeling pretty good about both of those things.
Oh, thank you. Well, feel the same, Matt. And so it's actually been a great journey. And so that's kind of leading into our topic. So Matt and I are part of a leadership forum down in San Diego. And we were just together in December for the happy hour of this leadership forum. And I was asking Matt about his initiatives for the year. And as I was listening to him, he was talking really about the span and control across the globe of working on these really critical initiatives and how they were going to impact the business. And he was doing it through his team. He has built an awesome leadership team. And I love it because I'm like, oh, how are you going to do that? He's like, I don't know. They're going to figure it out. I'm like, I love this. So it just, I realized I'm looking at the mature version of Matt in the sense of I've known him for this long and I've watched him grow from that director role to senior director to VP. And he's done this and he's helped grow Dexcom from 1,000 employees to 10,000 employees. So it just made me realize, I don't know personally if I could have the patience, the vulnerability, the self-awareness to stay within one company to go through that kind of change. And so I thought this was an awesome topic, which leads me to the topic of scaling. This is why we titled it Scaling Your Career During Hyper Growth, a case study for HR leaders. Dexcom has not necessarily taken a breath, but they continue to grow. So he's continued to grow with it. So two themes, Matt, as we talked about, what are we going to talk about today in 30 minutes about your career? Curiosity and humility came up. Yeah. So let me just start with curiosity. And I'm using the collective we when I say we're all experts in our specific HR careers, right? We've developed these skills. You've developed a mastery in global talent acquisition operations. However, we also need to become, and I believe we need to become business people and that are good in HR. So how did you continue to grow with the business operations? How did you continue to learn about the business from when you first started to where you are now?
Yeah, and I love the focus on curiosity and humility for this talk. It maps to our Dexcom values of listening and being dependable. And these are probably the two key things that have helped me to survive and sometimes even thrive in this marathon. And so, from a curiosity perspective, you have to of course know your business, right? And you also have to grow as fast as the business, right? And you also have to know how to keep your ego in check, right? And so there's a lot of different things where curiosity about people, about the business, about your function, and about yourself are really key, right? And being able to stay on the journey, I think, also takes that humility, making sure that you lean into things like mentorship and feedback from other folks, because your ego can be your worst enemy in terms of long-term success and collaborative leadership. So if you know thyself, the rest will follow. And of course, absolutely, curiosity about people and your business and your function, being an infovore, right? Someone who's continually bringing in information about these things. You have to feed that. And if you don't, it's going to be hard to, like I said, keep ahead of a business that's growing really fast.
Yeah. So let's walk through that a little bit, Matt, because I'm thinking of your journey and I'm thinking, okay, you're developing these relationships with the business leaders. You're trying to more than likely develop relationships with some senior business leaders so that you're staying ahead of the curve and knowing how you can help the business. So how do you position yourself? Sometimes some companies have a hierarchy, some are more matrixed, but how do you get in front of some of these leaders so they know, one, who you are, and then two, how do you start learning more what is important to them?
Yeah, no, that was key. And that was really something I focused on in the beginning, getting into Dexcom, and not knowing the industry very well. I went around to every one of our executive leaders and asked them what was the most important to them from a recruitment perspective as they looked at the growth ahead of us. And this is way back in 2016, which seems like ancient times almost. And so they told me very clearly what the critical roles were. I jumped on those myself and used recruiting, just like as in any HR function, you can use your function as a way of building those relationships with leaders. But in this case, I said, okay, well, if these are your most important roles, I'm going to work with you directly to hire these folks. It's nice looking back and seeing that some of those people that were those initial key hires are actually still with Dexcom today as well. But we also knew that we had a big product launch going on when I got here, and I knew that we needed to not constrain the product roadmap, which meant that we had to begin a technical recruiting function and get really good at software recruiting. We also had to make sure that the customer-facing roles were being were given all the the oxygen they needed, right? Because we needed to make sure that our customers were getting the support they needed. And then big manufacturing and shared services ramps came a few years later.
So I think you're sharing one of your instincts actually that has helped your career. So when you talk about product roadmap, so I know some of us, especially earlier in my career, I was definitely just more reactionary. I was just kind of listening to the business and they were giving me what they needed versus being proactive. So I love what you said. In technology companies and perhaps even service companies, they do get these roadmaps developed in terms of a strategic roadmap. How did, again, that's kind of my question. How did you plug in to be proactive to get a look at that strategic roadmap so that you could be more proactive? I like how you said breathe oxygen into
Yeah.
the initiative, right? How did you do that?
Well, yeah, man, you have to believe that your function is critical to the company's success too, right? And when a company's growing, it's pretty easy for HR to be critical to its success. And so it was pretty easy to say, look, our business growth is very easily tied to the growth of our ability to feed that growth, to get good at doing big ramps in any country. For me, my I guess my what a boss used to call my hip pocket trick is new country expansions, right? And so for Dexcom, that's been really valuable for them. Your hip pocket trick might be something different. For me, being able to go and parachute into any country and figure out how to grow a team from leadership all the way through to a couple thousand or more folks is something that I've been able to do over and over here at Dexcom, and that I know that the company sees value in. And so I think making sure that you focus on that execution, right? That you align what you're doing to where the business is going, and that helps you pay the bills, right? And if you pay the
Right.
bills, then you get to do the fun stuff, right? You get to really experiment in the white space and do different things because you'll have the latitude to do it, as long as you make sure that you are doing also exactly what the business needs you to do.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Obviously, say what you're going to do, deliver, right? What is it? Uh,
Under promise, over deliver.
yeah, over deliver. Thank you. Yeah, a little brain fog here. But in terms of you getting to know the leaders, getting to know the project roadmap, where have you stumbled? Have you stepped on toes accidentally? Have you perhaps shared too much information you shouldn't have, or should you insert yourself in a meeting that you shouldn't have been there? I'm just kind of curious in terms of that, like how
Yeah.
have you learned from maybe some of those missteps?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously relationships are important, and you can spend years building up relationships, and then make everything, and then everything can go away pretty quickly, right? And so you have to, of course, keep an eye on that, and you also have to kind of lean into folks who might be detractors or might not understand your function or what you're trying to do, right? Don't ever dismiss those people, or just say that they don't understand what you're doing. You have to go and make sure that they do understand, and so early on, making sure that my peers knew exactly what we were doing, kind of opening up that transparency. And also making sure that as one of the bigger teams in HR, that we were looking across our entire team and holding ourselves to a high standard. That was really important too. But you can easily, I think, let pride make you not take that feedback or lean into feedback from other groups, other COEs within your function or outside your function. But once you do start to do that, find thought partners in the strangest of places, and you will get better as a person and as a function. I guarantee it. That's very uncomfortable, but that's part of the curiosity and the humility that being able to do that and lean into those relationships is just going to make you better, and it's going to make your team stronger as a nice side effect.
Yeah, that's really good. And so let's just kind of sit on that for just another 30 seconds. Get comfortable being uncomfortable, I think is an important theme when you're developing as a person. So you are right in the sense, or I shouldn't say you are right. I have had similar experience when you go and develop relationships, to your point, with the ones that aren't your fans, perhaps, or that are detractors, and not stray away from them, which is easier to do, the more comfortable thing to do. But the more uncomfortable thing to do would be to go actually to them and to seek whatever feedback to develop that relationship. I guess I don't want to ask you, how did you do that, but rather maybe some tips to doing that.
Well, I'll just give one example. I was really lucky that my leader, sponsored a mentorship experience for me, during some of these tough experiences and times where it's difficult to really be a great collaborator or communicator, and that getting that kind of experience, and those are getting more and more easy to come by these days in terms of the kind of the democratization of 360s and that kind of stuff. So if you have access to that, you got to jump on it. But being able to really go in, listen to feedback from people that you really care about and those stakeholders and leaders that are critical to your success, and then doing something about it. With how you show up, with how you show up to your team, especially that for me was something that was really important. And also being accountable to that, telling your peers what you were working on, how you were trying to get better, and then showing them what you're doing. That was a big experience for me. It was again difficult. In terms of coaching, you get a mirror held up to you that is not always, it's not always the best version that you see. You see the things that you've been doing that, that haven't been helping you or your team. And you gotta take that hard medicine, I would say.
Yeah, that's a great point, Matt. In the sense of maybe part of the maturation, part of the growth we become just as individuals is we learn how to take that and don't necessarily personalize it as a negative, rather personalize it as a positive where we're seeing an opportunity where we can even get better. And I think what's also important to say here, this is not one and done. You're still doing it now. You're still growing now, right? We continue to grow throughout our careers until we're done, I'm assuming.
Yeah, no, I was talking to a longtime leader who's retiring soon, and I mentioned that my most difficult moment at Dexcom was when we were working on building up our big center in the Philippines, and he asked me if the project was status red, and I had to tell him yes, it actually is status red, and that's not something I had ever had to say, a place I had never been, and we bounced back and we made it happen, and for both of us, that experience was one of our best career experiences. But we had to go through a pretty dark and hard place, right? And so you also have to embrace, as some people say, embrace the suck when other people run from it. That's another way to make sure that you can keep growing in this kind of environment.
Great point. And so that's a good transition to then humility. Let's talk about that. So none of us are built to be good in all things, right? We have innate strengths that we've used to advance our careers, but we all have limitations, which we were alluding to in the curiosity that we were just talking about. So you just talked about a dark place for you, and I remember just throughout our time together, I've been on that journey with you, just listening to your dark places. So where was that point? How do we become self-aware without being defensive? Like, where was that moment for you where you're like, okay, embrace the suck, as you said? It's kind of like you're left with two options. I could quit or I can keep forging forward, kind of thing.
It's when I knew that, I mean, to be someone who could do the work I needed to do, someone who my leader could trust, that my direct peers could trust, and that my team could trust, that's what I needed to do. I wouldn't still be in this job if it wasn't for all those folks as well, supporting me and helping me through it. And that's what I would say when it does get to those points where it feels really tough, is that sometimes you can't get out of those places yourself, and you have to really make sure that you rely on other folks. And that is sometimes really hard for people, especially people who've been really good in an individual contributor kind of a role to ask for help. That can be some of the toughest thing, and they'd rather leave the company than ask for help, or to admit when you're in a tough spot. And I would just like to say that that's what people are for. That's what teams are for. And it's a pretty cool thing when you see that come into play. And so that's what I would say. It's all about the relationships you have and the folks that care about you and who want you to be successful. So make sure you surround yourself with those kind of people.
That's so essential. So I'm sure there's some listening now, and including points in my career where I probably was in the wrong place. If I didn't necessarily have that support or that leadership, maybe I wasn't ready. And so that's one of those things where I think if we're all sitting in this current situation, and what you just said, being vulnerable, trying to be self-aware, trying to grow, and if you don't have that supportive leadership, supportive community around you, that makes it even more difficult. And that could be the sign you need to find somewhere else to do this in. In your case, you were fortunate in the sense of you had a strong leadership team. You all were being propped up. And I think the other important thing, you said it earlier, is a mentor. And I don't even think I understood how to use a mentor. I've done it prescriptively, and you kind of talk about things, but I never, I think, felt that relationship where I could just go to people and be really open. And that's probably my own pride and arrogance. But talk to me of, sadly, hopefully it's some of it shedded. But talk to me about us about mentoring, where that has come in for you, and maybe how to work with a mentor that's more genuine than a prescribed.
Sure. No, I mean, it's a bit of a searing experience, right? Because first you obviously have to go out and collect the data, get a really good team of people who are the right people to give you that feedback, and then you have to absorb that, and hopefully you have a good coach who can help you absorb it, because it can be pretty tough to take actually when that first kind of bucket of water in the face. But then having a coach who will break it down for you, who will talk you through the different areas, especially if it's something around leadership and how you work with people. You get to understand that, if you like to, say your style is to throw people in the deep end when they start with your company, you start to understand that that's not actually a good way to treat folks, right? And so from big things in terms of relationships and working with people you work for and who work with you, to spending more time with them, all the way to how you show up and take accountability for change. Those things are just super important to think about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, vulnerability comes to mind, right? How to learn to become vulnerable. I feel like so often I have a different personality at work, and I feel like I should operate a certain way versus how I am at home or with my friends. And I feel like you really have to learn to become your wholesale, to become that.
Yeah,
Whole,
and don't be afraid to apologize.
yeah,
I've apologized to peers. I've apologized to people who work for me. And it's there's some power in that as well if you think it's if it's justified, obviously.
yeah. I think that's really important. So how have you? We talked about mentoring a little bit, but how have you learned from others? So we see some people in our careers that might be good models for us. Um, and some of us have gone out and talked to them, and wanted to learn. So have you had those moments where you had that chance to learn from others that were before you, and they were operating in a way that you aspired to be?
Oh no, I love taking little nuggets. I mean, I have little snippets from all of my different managers over the years. Some managers, you didn't learn a lot from, except in the negative, right? As opposed to some who really taught you, in a very, kind of um, uh, yeah, in a very focused way. And so, yeah, I mean, I can remember back to my very first boss ever, Mike, who taught me about integrity and making sure that you kept your promises, in business, to my current manager, who before, when we were peers at a different company, encouraged me to actually take time with my family when I was transitioning between jobs, and to not just try to jump into the next thing. And that was one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten. So you have to take a little something from every manager. It's like, it's like your sensei. You have to,
I
you have
love
to
it.
grab the rock out of their hand.
So last question here. As I think of my own journey as an HR leader, then I turned into a business owner, and I have just fumbled and stumbled trying to figure out how to become a business owner over the last 14 years. But there's those moments where there's these mind shifts, right? All of a sudden, like things become clearer. And just on your journey, we're all practitioners. We started all at the ground floor in terms of developing things, doing things. At what point was that mind shift for you, Matt, where you're like, the team's going to do it. The team's got to do it. The team's going to do it. I can't keep doing it, right? I'm going to lead here and just delegate. When was that mind shift for you?
I'm still working on it.
Right?
But also knowing that that's what my team needs to be successful, and that they deserve that, and that the best thing I can do for them is to open doors, right? Know which doors they want to go through, try to find those doors and open them for them. And so, my leadership team and I have worked together for a long time now. I trust them, implicitly, and so you have to stay close too. You can't just, one thing I learned in coaching is that you can't just do the Siegel method of delegation. You have to also stay close and help them be successful. So yeah, that's super important as well.
Yeah. Well, obviously you're in it together in this journey, which I think is awesome. And then you retain that team so they grow.
Yeah. I think you got to care deeply about your team. You also have to care deeply about your business and your customers as a leader, and have to balance those things in a way that leads to remarkable results. And those things can balance, right? They're not going to always be out of balance. You have to figure out a way to balance them.
Really well said. I'm going to use that clip later. I'll run that clip over and over. I like what you just said. And so we'll pause there, but I think the primary takeaways here is the curiosity. So continue with that journey, continue with that energy, to continue to be curious, and then humility, continue. I guess what's important is somebody said to me, once you feel like you've arrived, you haven't. So never feel like that. It's always the journey. Enjoy it, right? But never necessarily feel like you have it.
Yeah, no, enjoy the fun of flying up that learning curve. And yeah, I mean, I think connecting your team's goals to your function, to the business, right? And continuing to talk about what you're doing to enable your company's growth and success. That's how you grow along with the company, right? You help to really propel that growth forward. You got to understand org design, how your org has to reflect your strategy as well. I've only just learned some hard and crucial lessons on this as I redesigned my team in the last year. And so, we're now streamlined, flexible, ready to handle, all of our day-to-day recruiting and critical ramps, and fly into this 10th year at Dexcom here.
Awesome. All right, so we will flip over to the Q&A now, so Renee can jump back in and join us. Renee, do we have a question? A couple questions?
Yes, we do. Okay, so what strategies did you use to maintain team morale and engagement when facing setbacks or high pressure situations during rapid expansion?
Sure. I mean, you definitely have to have some fun, right? I mean, if you're not laughing, you're crying, and I think you have to make sure that the team knows they're appreciated. That's a mistake I've made in my career, is going through these things, and kind of saying, oh, for us, we did our job, we're good, and not celebrating enough. When you go through these big experiences, you have to make sure to celebrate the wins, and not just go on to the next thing, which can be very easy to do in a fast growing company. But stopping, smelling the roses, making sure that you appreciate, and that even get a good meal in together as a team or something. It's important to do that.
Great.
But you got to pay the bills first.
Right.
Good
Thank
point,
you.
right?
Okay, so another question. What's the best career development advice you've ever received? And tell us about the background in your screen here.
Oh yeah, that's Ngorongoro crater in Tanzania. It's one of the biggest natural craters, and a beautiful place if you ever get out there. Our car broke down on the tip of the crater, and luckily we had some nice people stop by and help us figure it out. But the question before was, before you distracted me with my background.
Sorry. The best career development advice you've ever received.
Yeah, I don't know if I have something that I can just pluck out. But again, it was going back to that very early experience, where I had a boss in my first ever sales job who really taught me the value of integrity, and making sure that you treated your customers right. And honestly, I think I still remember him and that lesson. So I think that's it. And then I think this quote has been stolen, but my grandpa also was a big proponent of work hard and be kind, and if you do those two things, everything else also follows.
Love that.
Yeah,
Wise
nice.
grandpa.
Nice. All right. How did you personally navigate the challenges of burnout and staying motivated while leading the talent acquisition through the hyper growth?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. We touched on it a little bit in terms of the dark places and that kind of stuff. But there were some really tough times, and what I recognized was that I had, in my mind at least, put myself in the position of being the single point of failure for the business, for a large growth project, for a big hiring ramp, and I had to realize that I wasn't the single point of failure. That it was it's a team sport, and that you have to make sure that you treat it that way. And I also, like I said, I had really caring managers and leaders, people on my team, who rallied and helped, and that was what got me through. And of course, my wife Allison as well. But it's a team effort, and sometimes you can feel very lonely. And when you have that feeling of being alone is when you most need to make sure that you reach out and you reestablish those connections, and you're not that single point of failure, right? And you never should think that.
Great. Thank you. That was it.
Awesome. Well, Matt, this was great. thank you again for taking the time and sharing your journey. I hope everybody got some impactful nuggets out of this as I did.
Let me end also thanking you, Brandon. I think, part of why I've been successful over this crazy 9-year journey is because I've had a network of folks like you, right, who I could go to and ask the hard questions about, big challenges that I was facing. There's a lot of folks who I'm thinking about right now in that group who have helped me through huge challenges and who have helped me kind of become the leader I am today. And so that's another one. Make sure that you have a community of folks, right? Folks that are doing something either, in your function, at your level, in your industry, but make sure you connect to that community, because that's also going to give you, those lifelines and that wisdom to help you through.
Yeah, thanks for that, Matt, because that small group, not saying a large group, right? It doesn't have to be a large group, but that small group that you can trust and lean into, as you said earlier, I think is critical to anyone's success, almost in life in general, let alone our careers. So that's a great point to add. And I think that's what we'll end it. So thank you again for all of this. And I'm hoping, again, we've got some really good insights for some of the folks that attended. And be on the lookout for future webinars as we'll continue this series talking about different change management initiatives. And again, you'll be notified once this is ready to view on demand. And we just wish all of you a blessed day. Thank you so much for attending.
Work hard and be kind.
Yep, love it. Thanks.